Raithal Cave Incident. On the 27th of May 2024, Ajay Raithal, 34, a goat herder from Raithal village in Uttarkashi district, Uttarakhand, India, set out for what seemed like an ordinary day of grazing. Ajay was an experienced herder who had spent nearly 2 decades navigating the steep forested slopes of the Garhwal Himalayas. He served as the primary breadwinner for his family of 5, tending a herd of 22 goats across the mountain pastures. That morning, he carried only basic supplies: a wooden staff, a small cloth satchel with chapati and water, and a worn mobile phone with intermittent signal. His wife, Rekha, 31, watched him depart at dawn, expecting his return by sunset as always. The grazing area sat roughly 3 kilometers uphill from the village, where dense deodar forests met alpine meadows. Rock formations and small cave openings dotted the landscape, carved over millennia by glacial melt and erosion. Local herders knew these caves as occasional shelter from sudden storms, but also as territorial grounds for Himalayan black bears emerging from winter dens. Ajay led his herd through familiar trails, moving higher as the goats grazed on fresh spring vegetation. The temperature hovered around 18 degrees Celsius, comfortable for midday work. He navigated narrow paths cut into cliff faces, where one misstep could mean a fatal fall. The terrain grew rockier as he approached a limestone ridge honeycombed with shallow caves. His goats scattered across the slope, and he followed, staff in hand. The forest canopy blocked much of the afternoon sun, casting the area in mottled shadow. Moisture clung to moss-covered boulders. Small animal tracks crossed the mud near cave entrances, but Ajay paid them little attention. He had seen bear sign before and knew to make noise, to avoid surprise encounters. But as he rounded a boulder formation near a particularly large cave mouth, the usual forest sounds ceased. The attack came without warning. A Himalayan black bear, approximately 150 kilograms, and protecting nearby cubs, exploded from the cave entrance. Ajay had no time to raise his staff. The bear struck him with massive forepaws, claws raking across his torso and shoulders. He crashed backward into rocks. The bear's jaws clamped onto his leg. Ajay screamed. He thrashed, tried to crawl. The bear dragged him. His fingers clawed at dirt, at roots, at anything. The cave mouth swallowed them both. Inside, darkness was absolute. The bear's hot breath and guttural growls filled the confined space. Ajay felt crushing pressure on his chest, felt ribs crack. He could not see, could not breathe properly. The bear bit repeatedly at his legs, his arms, his neck. Blood soaked into the cave floor. His phone fell from his satchel, screen shattered, useless. The attack continued for several minutes before Ajay's movements stopped. When Ajay failed to return by nightfall, Rekha alerted neighbors and village elders. A search party formed immediately, carrying torches and lanterns up the mountain paths. They called his name through the darkness. By dawn, the forest department joined with trained trackers. They found his scattered goats first, then blood trails leading to the cave. Inside, they discovered Ajay's body 12 meters from the entrance, surrounded by deep claw marks gouged into the cave walls. The bear had fled. Recovery teams worked for 3 hours to extract his remains from the hilly, treacherous terrain. Medical examination confirmed massive trauma consistent with bear attack. Lacerations across 60% of his body, multiple bone fractures, fatal neck injuries. The forest department documented the incident and installed warning signs across the area. Rekha received government compensation of 400,000 rupees, but no amount could fill the void left behind. The cave, once simply part of the landscape, became a marked grave in the memory of Raithal village. Splitrock Reservoir Cave Incident. On an autumn afternoon in September 2014, Christopher Petronino, 50, a dedicated Boy Scout troop leader from Rockaway Township, New Jersey, led a small group of scouts on a nature hike near Splitrock Reservoir in Morris County. Christopher had volunteered with Troop 368 for over 15 years, mentoring dozens of boys through wilderness survival and outdoor ethics. He was an experienced hiker, but had limited technical caving experience, treating caves as interesting geological features rather than environments requiring specialized skills. That day, he accompanied 4 scouts, aged 12 to 14, on an educational outing focused on local geology and wildlife identification. Christopher carried standard hiking gear, a day pack with first aid supplies, water bottles, energy bars, a flashlight, a rock hammer for mineral samples, and his troop leader handbook. The scouts walked ahead, energetic and curious, while Christopher maintained a watchful pace behind them. The trail wound through mixed hardwood forest, and the group paused frequently to identify tree species and animal tracks. Near the reservoir's northern shore, they discovered a small cave opening partially hidden by brush, roughly 1.5 meters high and 2 meters wide. The scouts wanted to explore. Christopher agreed to a brief look inside, warning them to stay close and move carefully. They clicked on flashlights and ducked through the entrance. The cave was shallow, extending perhaps 10 meters into the hillside before narrowing. The air smelled of damp earth and decaying leaves. Water dripped from calcite formations along the low ceiling. Christopher bent nearly double to fit his 6-foot frame through the passage. The floor was uneven, littered with small rocks and animal scat. They found a side chamber, slightly wider, where they could stand upright. The scouts examined the walls, noting scratches and markings. Christopher knelt to chip a small rock sample with his hammer when he heard movement deeper in the cave. A low grunt echoed from the darkness beyond their flashlight beams. Before he could react, a black bear, approximately 180 kilograms, and recently awakened from rest, charged from the chamber's rear. Christopher yelled for the scouts to run. They scrambled toward the entrance. The bear ignored them, fixating on Christopher. It struck him hard, knocking him sideways into the cave wall. His flashlight spun away. Darkness swallowed him. The bear bit down on his left leg, canines puncturing muscle. Christopher screamed. Pain shot through his entire body. The bear dragged him deeper into the cave, away from the entrance, away from light. He felt his shoulders scraping rock. His right hand still gripped the rock hammer. The bear released his leg, then bit his shoulder. Christopher swung the hammer blindly. It connected with the bear's skull. Once, twice. The bear recoiled, snarling. Christopher curled into a fetal position, arms protecting his head and neck. The bear circled, swatting at him, biting his legs again. Minutes stretched into an eternity. He could hear the scouts outside, crying, shouting. The bear would not leave. The scouts, terrified but thinking quickly, emptied their packs near the cave entrance. They laid out trail mix, granola bars, and sandwiches. The scent drifted inward. After 80 agonizing minutes, the bear finally moved toward the food. It emerged from the cave, allowing Christopher to crawl toward daylight. Blood soaked his clothing. His legs could barely support his weight. The scouts helped him to the trailhead where emergency responders arrived. Paramedics transported Christopher to Morristown Medical Center with multiple lacerations, puncture wounds to both legs and shoulders, and significant blood loss. He required surgery and weeks of physical therapy. Wildlife officials later determined the bear had been using the cave as a temporary den. Christopher survived because of his rock hammer and the scouts' quick thinking, but the incident left permanent scars, both physical and psychological. Ginnie Springs Cave Incident. In late April 2019, a group of 5 certified cave divers arrived at Ginnie Springs, a popular freshwater diving site in Gilchrist County, Florida, for an advanced penetration dive into the spring's extensive underwater cave system. The team leader, Marcus Chen, 38, was a technical diving instructor with over 500 logged cave dives and certifications in full cave, trimix, and cave rescue protocols. His dive partner, Rachel Kowalski, 33, held similar credentials and had explored caves throughout Florida and Mexico for nearly a decade. The remaining 3 divers, Alex Morrison, 29, Jennifer Lee, 31, and David Burke, 35, were experienced open water and cavern divers, completing their full cave certification under Marcus and Rachel's supervision. Each diver wore double steel tanks with redundant regulators, dive computers, 3 separate light sources, including primary canister lights and backup LED torches, cutting tools, reels with guideline, and full wetsuits, despite the constant 22 degrees Celsius water temperature. The plan called for a 45-minute dive penetrating roughly 300 meters into the Devil's Eye cave system, following permanent guideline installed by the cave owner. They conducted thorough pre-dive checks, reviewing hand signals, gas management, and emergency procedures. The spring basin was busy that afternoon with recreational swimmers and open water divers, but the cave entrance itself remained restricted to certified cave divers only. The team descended single file into crystalline water, visibility exceeding 30 meters. Sunlight penetrated the first 20 meters, illuminating white limestone walls covered in algae. They passed through the cavern zone, where natural light still reached, then entered the cave zone, where absolute darkness began. Their powerful lights revealed a tunnel roughly 4 meters wide, ceiling height varying between 2 and 5 meters. The guideline ran along the left wall, secured to permanent anchors. They moved slowly, maintaining visual contact, checking gauges every few minutes. Silt remained undisturbed on the cave floor, indicating good buoyancy control. The tunnel branched occasionally, but they followed the main line as planned. Water temperature dropped slightly. They reached a restriction at 180 meters where the passage narrowed to barely 1 meter, requiring them to remove tanks and push them through separately. Beyond the restriction, the tunnel opened into a large room approximately 10 meters across. As they swept their lights across the space, Rachel spotted movement near the opposite wall. An alligator, roughly 3.5 meters long, rested motionless on a ledge. Marcus signaled retreat. Alligators rarely bothered divers, but this one held position. Alex ignored warnings and swam closer. The alligator exploded forward, jaws wide, striking his tank valve. Alex kicked backward. 2 more alligators emerged from side tunnels. The divers were surrounded. Marcus grabbed Alex, pulling him toward the exit. The dominant male pursued with shocking speed. They squeezed through the restriction as the alligator scraped through behind them. Abandoning decompression protocol, they ascended rapidly. At 3 meters depth, the alligator clamped onto David's fin before they reached the surface. At 3 meters depth, during a mandatory safety stop to avoid decompression sickness, the dominant male caught up. It clamped onto David's right fin, shaking violently. David kicked with his left leg, striking the alligator's snout. The fin tore free. They surfaced in chaos, ripping out regulators and yelling for help. Shore personnel pulled them from the water. No serious injuries occurred beyond bruises and equipment damage, but all 5 were badly shaken. They reported the incident to the cave owner and Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Officers investigated and confirmed multiple large alligators had established territory in the cave system during breeding season, exhibiting unusually aggressive behavior toward intruders. The cave was closed for 6 weeks, while wildlife officers trapped and relocated 4 alligators from the system. Marcus later wrote in his incident report that the confined space amplified the danger exponentially, turning a manageable wildlife encounter into a life-threatening situation with no clear escape route.